Let me turn it on so you can keep talking. Go ahead. So,
Well, when I retired from the military, I was in the Corps of Engineers, and one of the programs that I oversaw at the particular district I was in was a small business program.
okay.
And so I had a pretty good understanding of how it worked and what the opportunities were. Um, so as I got out and got into my own small business, that was just when they were coming out with the SDV program. In fact, I saw it come out and I said, "Well, that's really interesting. It's like an 8A program." And in some ways, I started reading more and I thought, "Well, gosh, maybe I'm eligible." And it turned out I was eligible, and I didn't even know it.
Wow.
So I got involved in it right away. And my experience was a lot of hard knocks. I wish I could have accessed a small business help center. Now we have one in our town,
Okay.
and I think that at the beginning they probably could have gave me some pretty good help in doing things like getting registered in the CCR, which is now SAM's.
Right.
Just getting some of that stuff straight. But I knew more about the SDV program at that point than they did.
All
And I
right.
still do, I think.
And what year was that?
That was in 2003. So that
Okay.
was right at the beginning. I mean, President Bush had just signed the executive order a few months ahead of time. And for some reason, I got some crazy email that made me follow a couple links and start reading about it.
Okay.
You are right. I think the SBA, PTAC,
Mm-hmm.
and those things can give a lot of help, especially if you're just starting out.
Sure.
But I also think what happens very quickly is you get beyond because you're working in it every day and it's focused just on what you're doing. You get beyond their expertise.
Right.
But that getting started is worth $1 million.
Yeah, sure.
I had the advantage of at least working in the small business world for a few years. And I think you said in where you are, you didn't see a lot of training. And I don't see a lot of training coming out of these guys either. But if you go see them, they're willing to help you. But their problem is it's an inch deep and a mile wide. You go in there and they say, "Well, here's how the program works. Let me help you sell widgets." Well, I don't sell widgets. I do this over here.
Right.
So it
Right.
kind of sets them upside down.
Right.
That's what I found.
Right. So let's start over since we kind of started in the middle. So you are the 2009 SBA Award winner. I have your profile here, and you won for South Dakota.
I did. Isn't that amazing?
That I've actually never been to South Dakota before. I'm sure you're not surprised.
Well, it's a great place to be in business.
Yeah. Are they doing fracking up there now?
Almost none in South Dakota, but just across the border, straight north of where I am in North Dakota,
It's where there's all the fracking.
they are. And that's about a 4-hour drive straight north. You're right in the middle of the Bakken oil fields. And just to the west of us, about an hour and a half, you get into the Powder River oil fields, which isn't as big as the Bakken, but it's still very influential. And that basin had pretty much been developed to, had all the infrastructure there. We're up in North Dakota. They didn't have near the infrastructure they needed, and that's housing and roads.
Right. That's what
And all that kind of stuff.
that's what we're all reading about in the papers.
It's a crazy place. I had an office up in Williston, right in the heart of the Bakken for a year or two, and I pulled my people back to here. We're a couple hours away, but we can do what we need to do from here just as easy as being there. We thought we needed to be in there, we didn't. And it is the Wild West. It's kind of like the gold rush days were in Alaska around the turn of the century.
Right.
It's just interesting to watch it all develop. And the more you get into it, the more you see the twists and turns and craziness.
Right. No. Wow. So, going back to what I was saying, and my experience, I've seen that, like I said, a lot of the award winners from the SBA were not actually government contractors. Do you remember? I know it's a few years back, but do you remember the criteria for the actual award? Do you remember what that criteria was?
I don't. I didn't put together my package.
Okay.
My actually my assistant, who an Air Force wife who I hired to help us get in the Fed marketplace, put it together. I don't remember the criteria.
Okay. All right. Well, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. Well, in reading it, I don't know. I'm trying to get to the bottom of it because it appears there's people across various industries. I mean, I'm talking to people who own like apartment buildings, to people who have construction firms, and then a newspaper firm, and so it seems like I can't seem to get a hold of what the criteria was, and I'm still looking for it.
Well, I'm not sure. I think it went state by state. It probably had to do with some of the influence you had in the small business community.
Right.
But I will say that there are programs that we took advantage of. One is obviously the set-aside programs for small businesses, and particularly the service-disabled small business. I bought my building that I'm in using a SBA 504 loan.
Okay.
And what that allowed me to do was get into that loan with much of it guaranteed by the SBA, and only had to bring 15% down to the building. Normally it's only 10%, but we had to do 15 because it was a historic building. I don't know that we would have gotten a loan at that time had it not been for that program. It's great for the bank. The bank borrows you 15 or 50%. The SBA through a bond borrows you 35%. You put 15 in, but the bank gets first position on the entire loan. So, I mean, for a bank, they get first position. They're only borrowing half the money.
Yeah. So
so that worked well for us. A couple years later, we did a business operating loan through the SBA 7A program, and it was rather limited just a couple of years ago, and we would have done a larger one for put more capital in the company to do something, but they were limited. Now, just recently, and I know it's been in the last 18 months, they've expanded that, brought the limit up to $5 million. We're back in there right now because we're getting that 7A loan paid off. We're going to do another one that allows us to do more, and they guarantee, I believe, 70 or 75% of the loan. So the banks like it.
Oh, the banks love it, I'm sure.
And it really helps out small businesses that are trying to get capital, because small businesses usually don't have access to the big money. Now, we know there's a lot of money sitting out there on the sidelines, but they want high returns. You know, the non-bank lenders.
Sure.
A small business, we're not in the high-risk business.
No.
They are. So this really, I think, used properly, it can really help a small business. Now, they lock you up every week till Sunday. You don't want to miss a payment because they'll come get your firstborn, but it is a way to get capital in the company to be using it. So that's been a good program for us. So, between the small business program, set-aside program, the 504 and the 7A, we have taken advantage of some of these advantages, or some of the things that the government has, and I'm pretty happy about that. So, and I think some of that was in our package, and I think they liked that we're able to grow, because we had a lot of growth from 2003 to 2009. We had a really rapid growth.
Yeah, it says that you bought the company in 2004.
Well, it was actually June of 2003.
Okay, well, so let's say, so you came out of the military. You were in the Army Corps of Engineers.
Yep.
And then you left the Army Corps. And then how did you go from leaving the Corps to acquiring the company?
It's interesting. I actually, he got employed in a great job.
Okay.
A large engineering firm, large national firm,
Okay.
70 offices across the country.
Okay.
Hired me right out of the Army and gave me just a tremendous opportunity, and those people are still good friends of mine today. Myself, I wanted to live in a smaller community. I wanted to own my own business.
Okay.
I wanted to be my own boss. You know, even though they brought me in at a very high level in that company, I was a long way from running the place.
Sure.
And I just wanted that autonomy. One of the jobs, or one of the duties that I had was, as we looked to grow that company, was looking at small businesses to acquire. And we had looked at a small business in Rapid City, South Dakota, to acquire, and the company had passed on it because it wasn't right for them. The small company was owned by two guys who were ready to retire and move on. That had a long history, had done a really good job. Well, the larger company looks at that and said, hey, we're buying people here, and
Right.
those guys are going to retire. They didn't have an interest. I wanted to move back to the Black Hills, so a lot of it had to do with location.
Sure.
My last daughter was graduating from high school. My wife and I said, what do we want to do? Do we want to live where we're at, or we want to move someplace? And we said, well, let's move back to Rapid City. We had been stationed there in the Army, and we just really enjoyed it. It's a great place, great environment to run a business.
Mm-hmm.
We have the best most tax-friendly state in the union. So we just wanted to do that. And I pulled that file out, dusted it off, and said, this isn't right for a big company to acquire, but I could do a buyout. So I approached the two owners, and we did an overtime buyout, based on profits and different things.
Right.
And there was a couple people trying to buy that company, but I gave them a vision to take it from what it was to move it into working in the federal marketplace. And they thought that would work, and I did too. And as it turns out, it did work pretty well.
Okay.
And we had rapid, so I was able to get ownership, started retooling the company, so to speak, to work in the 21st century because they lagged behind.
Right.
They didn't have things like, they didn't have a basic computer network.
Sure.
I had to change out a couple people, to be honest. I had one senior engineer that worked for me, and they only had two people in the company. This was in 2003.
Right.
Imagine. We only had two people in the company
Uh-huh.
that had access to the internet. And I said, well, the first thing we're going to do is network all the computers. And we're going to upgrade those, teach people how to use them, and give people access to the internet so they can get more productive. And this engineer looked at me and he said, well, boy, we don't want to give the internet to our employees. They might use it. Well, about 3 months later, he was gone.
Yeah.
And we had a network. And we took it from that to really one of the region's leaders in using automated systems for engineering and architecture and different things that we do now.
And at the time, you were just doing architecture, correct?
Well, no, we were doing engineering,
Uh-huh.
surveying, and a very small amount of architecture.
Okay. So. Okay.
We were, it was, for this region, it was a very prominent engineering firm, but they had a few architects. The firm had been around for about 60 years, so it had gone through a lot of different forms, if you would. I started building the architecture a little bit, started adding, took it from 14 people up to about 22. And then I had another architecture firm in town that had done a really good job of marketing, but basically oversold themselves. And came to me and the owner asked me out to coffee at barely noon. He said, I need to sell my company and I want to sell it to you because I've got all these great projects and I can't execute them and I really don't know how. They're huge projects.
Right.
And it was 6 weeks later, they were all peer architects. I brought them into the firm. We jumped up to about 35 people. And then from there, we just organically grew to about 54.
Okay.
By 2011. 2011, though, was a tough year if you were in the federal marketplace. You know, it was sort of the tail end of the big recession,
Mm-hmm.
but was the part of the recession that was just hitting us. And we had several large projects that were coming to an end. I had 3 large design build projects that were canceled at the drop of a hat.
Wow.
And during those years, we had done a tremendous amount of stimulus work as part of the administration stimulus project, and they stopped as fast as they started. So we were ramped up there and had this false sense of security, and then everything fell out. So we had to make some adjustments. Built up a lot of debt, had to downsize, and now really it's taken us to now to work our way back to where we're growing again and feeling comfortable.
So would you say
So
that?
there's been an ebb and flow in all of this.
So would you say that was one of the tough periods of during your growth phase? 2011 was one of those tough periods.
You asked what lessons learned I would have. One of them is growing too fast,
Okay.
because as you, at least in my business, as you go through different sizes, it takes a different mentality.
Mm-hmm.
We went from a firm of 14 people to all of a sudden we had 50. Well, there's a whole lot. Now you need an HR director, you need a controller, you need some extra accounting people. How you handle and approve contracts and the review. You don't have that intimate knowledge of every project going on anymore.
Right.
And that takes maturing to get to that point. But when it happens like that,
Sure.
so fast,
Hockey stick.
it really, looking back over the last 10, 11 years, we grew too fast. And then when everything crashed in 2011, I wasn't prepared for it. And, I would do things differently now. I was from the military mindset that you don't leave any bodies on the battlefield. So even though we had less and less work, we kept people employed.
Wow.
It would have been better off for the company and better off for everybody had I made those tough decisions
Sooner.
and cut the appropriate people loose. But you spend that time building, you don't want to tear down what you built.
Right. Sure.
And that was a hard lesson learned. And I think if we could have grown at a more controlled growth rate, or if we would have, even things with the recession and our crash in 2011, we would have been able to deal with it better. The good news is we're still in business, where a good number of my counterparts that are in the same business, in the same industry, aren't in business.
Right.
We
Right.
made it through. We said at the time, if we can make this through, we'll come out of the other end stronger, and we have. We are much more efficient, have a much better idea of what the important metrics are to evaluate, are we doing well, are we not doing well? And we've really learned our limitations, or what we're good at, and we focus on those. For a while, we were trying to go in so many different directions, and it was all working until it didn't.
Right.
And now we are very focused on what we do well, and if we're going to take on another service line or something, we're very, very careful in doing that. Where before we just said, let's give it a try. And we were just going too fast.
Right. Right.
So those some of my lessons learned. There's a few others along the way.
So you just said something. You said what the important metrics are. What would be some of those metrics that you could share with other entrepreneurs that someone starting out needs to have as a guideline to going into business? So if I'm starting out
I
from
think
scratch,
one of the things you really have to understand is the basics of an income and balance sheet.
okay,
What they mean and how your business is affected by those, or I should say how your income and balance sheet are affected by the decisions you make. Watching your overhead and setting up whatever tools you have that you can assess the impact of your decisions. So we have it now, we're in the service industry. We're architects and engineers. We provide a professional service. I can go in and by manipulating a couple small factors, whether it's what we pay people or, what their overhead, how much time they spend in overhead, all that, and I can see the effect to our bottom line. Once you get control of that, and you can control those expenses where you're really the master of all those expenses, whether they're labor, fixed, or some other variable. Now all I have to do is concentrate on bringing that revenue in, and that becomes the variable. And then look for ways to stabilize that income variable. If you don't understand all your costs of running your business, you're at peril. And that was especially true for us because we didn't understand it that well. And then to grow so fast and have other expenses going every which way, reining that in is very important. If you count the nickels, they add up to dimes and end up to dollars. You don't want to live too large.
Right.
You keep things in perspective and have it at the end of the day so you can make a decision what you do with it, whether you use it as profit or improve your company or whatever. But if you bleed out in 1,000 different places, it really adds up.
Yeah, in saying that, I can remember when you're making a lot of money, it's easy to not watch the expenses because you're making money and you're paying all the bills and you're paying everything. And then when the well dries up, that's when, like you said, if you're not counting
those, still keep spending that money.
And still keep spending that money. That's when those nickels and those become dimes, and the dimes become dollars. So that's a really good point there. I've had a similar experience. As long as the money was coming in, it was fine. You just paid all the bills.
I think another thing is not to spread yourself too thin.
Okay.
People, usually entrepreneurs, are never. They're like a basic leadership problem. Is that they're not happy with the status quo, and they're always creating, they're always improving, and at some point you got to get a system in place that you can just run, let that engine run. But entrepreneurs, by nature, are always going to be improving or trying to add on.
Sure.
And you start spreading yourself too thin. Maybe you're taking on projects that you really can't perform on, or you're doing something, or maybe you're getting involved in the community, and that's a good thing. Volunteerism, getting involved maybe in your chamber of commerce or economic development, United Way, whatever you get involved in. And that stuff is all good. And, I very much encourage our people to do that, and I try and do it. But at the same time, I've learned, and I try and put a lasso around how much you do, because you can't do everything well. You're better off doing one or two really well and keeping the others just kind of on a warming plate. It's the folks that try and do it all, and they'll spend half their time out in the community, and their business will suffer, and they'll lose the golden goose.
Wow.
I see that. I see it all the time.
No, I see it as well.
I came through a period, I got involved in our Chamber of Commerce and got elected to the board of directors, and we have a very large and very active Chamber of Commerce. We're a 5-star chamber, which is the highest rating out of like 600 chambers nationwide. There's probably more than that. I believe there's thousands, but there's only 60 of them that get that 5-star rating. So it's a very good chamber. I brought myself up. The next thing you know, I'm the chairman of the board. And that took a lot of time. I'm glad I did it. It brought things to my company and to me that I couldn't have got other places. But there's a price to pay for that type of involvement. And you get your eye off the ball. And it's not that you shouldn't do it, or there shouldn't be people wanting to do that. But my experience has been, you need to know the price. And I was doing that, but that was the only one I really, I kind of pushed everything off the side. Any other boards or charitable organizations stuff I got involved in, and that took all my time. Had I done something else, it would have been the breaking point. I was happy to do it. I'm happy to be done with it now too, so I can concentrate back on my business.
So let's pivot. Let's stay on that same topic. What about when they say work-life balance?
You know, that's a very good subject.
You know, they say that entrepreneurs are they working 60 hours a week or 80 hours a week, or you know, you never have any time for yourself. And I mean, how do you see that in starting out when you first started, as opposed to say today?
You know, I think I had an advantage because after a military career, I worked on that pretty hard. Even then, to have a balance between my family, my personal life, and my work, and it can get out of balance, and you'll feel it get out of balance.
Sure.
You start missing dates with your wife, or you know, you can just tell things are out of kilter one way or the other. I think work-life balance is very important, but there's also the thought that you got to like what you're doing, and your partner, your spouse, whatever it is, you know, they've got to be into it too. You know, those folks that think that, hey, this is my work and this is my private life, and they're completely separate. They're not going to be the leaders, and they're not going to be the entrepreneurs. Those are the people that are going to draw an hourly salary, come to work, not have to worry about anything, and go home, and they can do that.
Sure.
If you want to be an entrepreneur and grow a small business, your family's in it with you.
Right.
And if they're not, you better maybe decide if that's what you want to do.
Right. Right.
I'm very lucky. I've got a very supportive wife. She reins me in when I'm getting out of balance, but she's also very understanding when she knows I have to do something. And she's right there with me, participating. And she looks at it as her company too. She doesn't spend hardly any time in the company, but when she's here, you know, she's the biggest cheerleader we got, cheering people on, because, and that's what you need.
Right. If
you have somebody that says, you know, I don't want anything to do with your work, that's your business, that sort of thing, you're going to have struggle growing a small business.
Right. Right. Sure.
Wouldn't it be nice? I mean, that's just,
sure.
That's my opinion. Maybe others can pull it off differently.
No. That's fair opinion. Now, right now, what's your mix in terms of government contracts versus non-government contracts?
You know, right now we're at an all-time high for government contracts. I just looked it up last week. We're doing 69% of our work is for the federal government. I take that back. Yes, 69% for the federal government.
Okay.
The other, I got about 28% that is for either an industrial client or a small local government.
Okay.
So that I only have less than 2% of my clients right now are private clients.
Okay.
Where it's not a corporation, where it's just individuals.
Right.
You know, I look at those corporate clients, you know, as institutions that are not much different than a small municipality or something. So most of our work is either for the government in some way or an institution. Those are good paying clients. They pay on time, they have processes, procedures. One of my lessons learned is picking my clients. Because sometimes you get the wrong client, they're either slow to pay or they don't pay, or I like to say this, particularly with the federal government or larger institutions, they expect you to do a lot. They ask you to do a lot, but they know what they're asking and they're willing to pay you for it.
Right.
It's a more sophisticated client. That's where I've focused us over the last 10 years. 10 years ago, 3/4 of our work, well, half our work was with private developers, which are really tough because they're private. You know, you don't get paid unless, you know, they make some money, and that's a risky position to be in. Or small municipalities, which the smaller the municipality, the less sophisticated they get. You know, They don't have a large staff. They don't have set procedures or processes. Some are better than others. So I've tried to focus on those clients that I know they know what they're doing. Particularly the Veterans Administration and Department of Defense is who we do most of our work for.
Yeah, the Veterans Administration, they do a lot of service disabled work. They do a ton of it.
Yeah, they do, and that's our advantage.
Sure.
Right today, we, in the federal marketplace, we very rarely in the last 2 years will pursue any work that isn't set aside for a service disabled veteran.
Okay.
Only because there's so much of it out there. Why should I go out and compete?
No,
Even
sure.
if it's just a small business set aside, there's a much bigger pool than there is for an SDV.
Right.
And we still compete just as a small business, but the project has to be really right for us. We have to know that we can really knock it out of the park. We're going to move it from our work mix from SDV status to just in that small business status over the next 5 years. That's our strategic goal.
Okay.
So that we're doing less than about 20% of our work as an SDV set aside 5 years from now.
Okay.
But right now, it's probably 50% of that or more.
Okay.
But, even more. That's how we're moving it through, because when you're an SDV, if something happens to me and all your work is our status is based on my status.
Right.
That's pretty tough if I go away.
No, sure.
So we want to set up the company for success and make us more valuable.
Okay. All right. Excellent. I like that plan. So the programs, what would you change about the program?
Which program?
The SDV program.
They made some good moves.
Originally, I mean, sorry to cut you off, but I know when it first came out, it was a self-certifying program.
That's where I was going to go.
Okay.
It was self-certifying, and it got totally out of control. Everybody was, there was just fraud. And I had taken advantage of it. I lost some major contracts to people that were just, it was...
The honor system.
It was maybe an SUV, that was fronted for a big company that did all the work, and that guy was pushed aside. I don't like that. I've always said if I'm going to participate in the small business program, we're going to participate and we're going to follow the intent of the program. One is we're going to use it to build our company and our capabilities, and we're going to do it honestly, and we're going to do it in such a way that we're not a pass-through. So what I've seen is from that, when they first started self-certifying, then they went into a little bit more aggressive way of certifying SDVs, which I very much welcome. Now it's gone to, I think the SBA may even be taking it over from the VA to a very rigorous evaluation process. I've gone through 3 surprise inspections here in my company where that VA has sent out somebody to verify that we're an SDV, and I welcome it. I bring it in. I say, I'm happy you're here.
Oh, that's great news. That's comforting.
Now, what I've seen, and this is to my advantage, and I don't know what the numbers are, but they had like 50,000 SDVs out there and they're self-certifying.
Mm-hmm.
That number is down to like 5,000 or 6,000 now.
Wow, I had no idea.
And that's good. The only part I don't like is the pendulum has swung some, and it's almost like they're looking for reasons to disqualify you. And they, I think the Center for Veterans Enterprise, and I know they had some trouble with the firm that they had hired to do these evaluations. I heard that they fired them a month or 2 ago. It swung all the way the other way. Now, if they find some small thing that they don't like, they're going to make you change it and tell you how to run your small business. I don't think that was the intent of the program. For example, I had partners. I always kept a majority. In fact, now I own over 70% of the company.
Okay.
But I let people buy stock.
Right.
And in our bylaws, it allowed for those minority shareholders to have some say in the running of the company. They could never overrule me because I was the majority stockholder. The CVE came in and said, hey, no, we want you to have absolute control, and even though they're shareholders, they cannot have any say in the running of your company. So we had to change our bylaws to line up with their rules. So I think they've gone overboard, and what they're doing is they're forcing small businesses into bad business decisions. Because if I have a partner, I want him to be a partner.
Right, sure.
Maybe he has a minority shareholder.
But he has a vested interest.
But he's got to be able to know that he has some say in the running of the company.
Right.
Now, ultimately, they're not going to force me to sell it. They're not going to make me do something that I don't want to do. But I think the pendulum's gone from one side to the other way too much, and they're looking for those opportunities. And so I'm finding SDBs, and I've spent a lot of time trying to find veterans when I do and help them get into the program. And I just helped a friend of mine who owns a construction company. I helped him go through the whole process of getting his disability rating.
Okay.
Get registered in SDB, and now he's competing as an SDB, very successful.
Wow.
But some of those guys are saying, this is too hard. I mean, this is too hard. So we've got to find a comfortable balance. They're not helping the veteran at this point. The pendulum's gone to the point where they're making it very difficult for them.
I like what you just said. That's why we're here today. Because, like you said, people say that government contracting is impossible. And from the outside in, if you've never worked in it, it could appear that way. It could be daunting. And so that's why we're saying, hey, listen, what I found when I first started doing government contracting was there were a ton of consultants. People trying to get you to pay $5,000, $10,000. We'll register you in all these various programs. We'll register in these books, and we'll put you in front of the people. And, I never did it because we didn't have any money. But at the same time, I just started attending conferences and trade shows and like the SBA, the National SBA Award show. Those types of events, talking to people, talking to other entrepreneurs like yourself. And that's why I wanted to kind of expose that, hey, that regular people can actually get into government contracting and be successful at it. And that's the whole idea behind the program.
Yeah, it's tough. And without programs that kind of set it aside for you, so that you get an opportunity to do a couple projects, you might not get there.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I had to sneeze.
That's okay.
Don't put that in the video.
No, we'll edit it out.
It is tough, and unless you've done it a couple times, it is terribly daunting. But if you don't do it, they'll never get it.
Right.
You might as well just give it to the large businesses and let them run it.
And let them run the whole program.
So, but I don't like where the CVE went. They've gone too far and just plain made it too hard. And we're hanging in there. But as far as small businesses go, I think I'm more on the enlightened, more sophisticated ability to work in the small business or in the federal government. Some of these guys it's just a foreign language to them, but they have good products and services to offer.
Sure.
And it drives me nuts that they're not, that they shy away because they're afraid.
Right. You never told us how you got your first contract.
It's not that this company hadn't done some federal work. Over the years, they did a little project, maybe did a little street project here or there. I'm trying to think what my first federal project was.
When you took over the company, what did you?
Yeah, I went after a number. One of my strategies was to get IDIQs in place.
Ah, okay.
For us, IDIQs, you're able to establish a long-term working relationship with a federal agency.
Yeah.
The first couple task orders they give you it may be a little bumpy. And you have to have a talk with them, say, these first couple are going to be bumpy, but let's look down the road because after a while they'll get better. We have an Air Force base here. We got a project or two, and it was bumpy, and it was a hard learning curve. I think that they were profitable. But it took me 5 years to get this company to the point where I felt comfortable taking on federal work. 5 years.
Wow.
So it was not an easy thing.
Wow.
It was learning for all of us and hanging in there and keep going after it. I had some horrible contracts. And just because it's the federal government doesn't mean they know what they're doing. I had one particular agency who runs all the federal buildings in the world. I won't say who they are. I had a contract from them, and they approached it totally from a contractual standpoint with no technical expertise on their side and no bending. And the contract was miserable. I prayed every day that the phone wouldn't ring and be them to give me more work. And we got out of that contract as fast as we could. We learned a few things of what not to do, but more than that, I learned how to help set expectations with a new government client. Just over time, we started building. I teamed with a construction company on some design builds where we did the design, they did the construction.
Mm-hmm.
They had a lot of federal experience. I can't tell you how valuable that is.
Okay.
When you're alongside somebody that really knows what they're doing. So we tried to reach out to other AE firms and do the same thing, and we did. We had a mentor-protege agreement with a large architectural firm. It was very beneficial in that we learned a lot. We were able to use their resume to help us get jobs. Once we got them, we did some work, they did some work, and over time, after about 3 years, we started getting pretty good at it.
Okay.
I didn't like some aspects of that particular mentor-protege agreement, but they helped us immensely. So I can't really answer the question, what was my first job?
Well,
but I can remember some of the early
strategies and techniques
we had.
No, I like it. You've essentially gone through and used all the techniques that they train you to use, which is mentor-protege agreements, the joint ventures. You did the IDIQ, you did MATOC.
I'm going after IDIQs like crazy because those are they've been very good for us.
Yeah,
MATOCs.
Yeah, I have a friend here who they took their business from nothing to something overnight with a few MATOCs down here at the VA hospitals. I mean, they picked up 2 MATOCs and or IDIQs, and there's more work they can shake a stick at.
Is he a veteran?
Yeah, yes, disabled veteran.
Good.
Yeah,
I'm
disabled
glad to
veteran.
see that's working out.
Disabled veteran. Yep.
Yeah. They're taking us all over the country. Here we are out in the middle of South Dakota. Most people from Florida don't even know where South Dakota is. But we're just kidding.
No, well, we taught us geography in school. They don't teach it anymore, I don't think. Everything's the internet now.
We got our first national contract started 3 years ago. And we're 3 years into it. We're almost out of capacity. In fact, we're out of capacity and it's working for the National Cemetery Administration, Washington, D.C. They gave us a lot of work. We're working from New York to California to Texas to Oregon, everywhere.
Wow.
Probably on about 15 different national cemeteries right now, doing good work. Civil engineering, architecture, landscape architecture,
wow.
the things that we do.
Wow.
And we hope that those type of things continue. We worked very hard to keep getting out there after IDIQs in various agencies because they've been good for us.
Wow. Well, we're at 44 minutes. I don't want to take up all of your time. I appreciate the time that you've given me today. If I was starting out today and I had no knowledge of federal contracting, where would you direct me? Is there any resource that you would send me to or any place that I can go to learn about about contracting in the federal arena, or if I'm an AE firm and I'm interested in doing a government contract, what could you?
Well,
what would you
think
say to me?
You know, get the mechanics set up. I would go to your local SBA
Okay.
and attend a few of these different conferences that, depending on what you're doing, they'll help you get the mechanics set up. Make sure your company's registered, make sure you have the right corporate documents, and get you registered in SAMs and those different things. And as you start down the road, those things that you mentioned, I think partnering with a large company that has had a success in the federal marketplace really helps. Not even necessarily a large one, just somebody that has that experience. I like those mentor-protege agreements, but here's the thing on the mentor-protege agreement. Don't jump into it till you're ready. Establish that relationship, and because you only have 3 years on that. And if you jump into it and you spend the first year and a half doing basic stuff that you wouldn't have done, not doing work for the government, but just kind of get yourself organized. You only got a year and a half left of that.
To actually be successful and grow the
so
business.
You got to start a relationship, and then once you get to the point where you're ready to perform, whatever it is, then apply for that mentor protege, taking those benefits, and start learning your way around, locally. Federal people are no bit different than anybody else. They want to work with people they know and trust. Develop a relationship with someone that buys your service. If you sell furniture, get to the local federal agencies that are going to buy it. Work with their interior designers and whatnot. They're just people.
Right.
And we had a saying in that company that I worked for before, and I brought it here: friends hire friends, and when they can't, they hire them anyway. That is still true in the federal government. But rather than friends, they're looking for a relationship with someone they can trust to get the work done.
Right.
And make their job easy.
That's make their job easier.
And they'll help you. I mean, if you show progress, I haven't met many federal contracting officers or contracting officers representatives, whatever they are, that won't bend over backwards to help you if they know what your goals are and establish a relationship.
Right.
There are, just like anywhere else, there are a few lazy people that are just coasting through life. Pass them by and find somebody else that's going to help you. But develop some relationships.
So if you were starting out from scratch, you'd go to the SBA. What would you do? If you started from scratch and you didn't have anything.
Once you get your company set up, I'd go 2 places. One is I'd find out who's buying my services and develop a relationship with them and let them know exactly where you're at. Because people at the core want to help out other people. That's what I would do. Develop a relationship with someone in the federal marketplace who's going to buy your service. Because once you get that first project, the second one comes a lot easier.
Wow.
So it is.
Any other resources that you have that you've used that's helped you out? They sell a ton of books on federal contracting and selling to the government. Any of those resources?
I like it. I stay connected by a few different small business conferences.
Okay.
Next week I'm going to the Army Corps of Engineers, where it's actually the Corps of Engineers and Society of American Military Engineers.
Yep.
They have a small business conference in Kansas City.
Okay.
Best conference I can go to, period. I make more connections and maintain relationships like crazy. The VA does a good, they do a good national conference.
Okay.
And depending on the state or the local area, some have better conferences. But that's a place just to go and meet people, and everybody's kind of concentrated. And now with the federal government, especially with them putting some teeth into that second tier subcontracting plans that people put in place, Um, Small businesses, if you're capable, are going to be very popular. There's the key. You don't know, if you're not capable in your own field, don't expect to get work handed to you.
Right.
That's number one. You got to know, you got to be able to do what you do.
Right.
Whether it's construction, engineering, furniture sales,
Sure. IT.
running yoga studios. I don't know. You got to be good at what you do.
Right.
They're not going to give you stuff because you're a nice guy. So that's make sure you develop your craft.
Okay.
That drives me crazy, by the way.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people say, "Hey, I'm not giving you contracts."
Right.
Well, can you do what you do?
Yeah.
No, they say they can, but they can't.
No, I had that experience. I don't know if you watched one of my videos that I sent out, but effectively I was consulting for a company, and they were begging for contracts. I mean, literally, they were begging the government for contracts, and then when they got the contract, they said, "Well, hey, we're a small business. How can you hold us accountable?" I mean, they were begging for the contract. And we're not talking about just set aside. It's a set aside contract, and it was a negotiated contract, so it wasn't even put out for open bid. So it wasn't no competitive bid. It was sole sourced to the firm, and after they got into it, they said, "Well, hey, listen, how can you hold us to the criteria? We're just a small business. You're not being fair." So I like that. I like what you said.
One of the things that we've learned, and we don't do it all the time really well, but when you do get a contract, go to who your user is.
Okay.
Whoever you're going to interface with.
Right.
And ask them on the first day, say, at the end of this, you're going to evaluate me, and here's the evaluation form. How do I get exceptional on every one of these?
That's a great tip.
And if you ask them that, they'll tell you, maybe they've never thought about it, but you write it down, and then partway through the project, say, how am I doing on these?
Oh, wow.
If you do that, they want to help.
Wow.
But if you go in there with the attitude of those other guys, how can you hold me accountable? You're doomed.
Wow. That's an excellent tip. That's an excellent tip. I've never, that's the first time I've heard that. That's an excellent tip for someone starting out.
Plus it tells you what's important.
Sure, right. Going forward. What?
Just because one guy says one thing, don't expect the next guy to say the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, some agencies are better than others, but you got to get in there and figure it out on each job.
Wow. Well, a lot of times also what I've learned is the user is different from the contracting agent. So the contracting officer doesn't know what the expectation is of the user either. So they can't give you that information even if they wanted to. So I like your idea of talking to the user to find out, hey, what is it that you're expecting from me?
The federal government is following this path of centralizing their contracting and doing it remote, and to them, in summer of the mine, a contracting officer can handle any type of contract, and they don't have to be there. I like it when the contracting officers are part of that agency that are invested in that project along. Now we do engineering construction, so if we have a contracting officer that knows those people that need the building designed, and they work with them all the time, and they're vested in the end product, it is so much better than when you get a contracting officer that's in 3 states away and all they're doing is processing the contract.
Right.
And those two don't have a dialogue. And all of a sudden you're in between those two. That makes it tough. It just depends on what contract you get. But you need to watch out for that. People think everything's the same. It's not. Some are set up for success, and some are going to make it harder for you.
So where are you at now in terms of employees? Your number of employees?
I think I've got 36 today.
Okay.
We're trying to hire, I think, about 5 people. I want to go up to about 45. I've determined that's a sweet spot for me. And when we grew to 54, we had people stashed everywhere and at a couple satellite offices. I still have a couple people working remote. I have most people here in South Dakota, I have two people in Denver, one in Missoula, Montana, and one in Baltimore. But, life took them to those places, and we were able so they could work from their home. Not everybody can do that, these people can. But 45, if I get to that number, that's how many desks I have, how many offices I have. So when I get there, I can maximize my profit. If I want to jump another 10 people, it's another bigger investment for me. But and you have to look at where you're at. I'm 56. I don't want to have to make an investment. It takes me 10 years to pay off.
Right.
I want to start taking. So as I do the analysis, if I get to 45, maybe I can go a bit higher than that. I can be very productive, and I don't have to add any overhead people because as you grow, you might need another accountant.
Right.
Maybe you're going to need an extra secretary or this or that. With the staff I have now,
you can grow to 45.
I can grow to that point, and I don't have to add any overhead. So everything's, a lot more comes back to me. So I think I'm at 36 today. We've got about 5 openings. We've got a very good backlog. I'm sitting really good. I'm still digging out of, some past sins, of 2011 and different things, but things are pretty bright, and I like that.
Okay, good.
Just because you grow doesn't mean you make more money.
That's
for example, for a while, especially for a couple of years there, when I had 22 people, I made more money than when I had 54. So
I've heard that before.
You got it. So it's forced me to look at, well, why is that? Where am I now? And that's why I come to the 45 number. I was all set to go to 70. That was I thought that was my goal. And I started thinking about it. So what do I have to do to get to 70? Well,
Right.
I have to buy furniture, computers, and car, and this, that, and the other, and open another office. And I started doing the math and figure out if I just stayed right here, the bottom line is going to be bigger.
Right.
So, and we go back to quality of life. When you're growing, you've got to be on roller skates.
Yeah.
And I'm ready just to let the machine operate for a while.
Those last 2 points you made were really key. I've heard that from other entrepreneurs that she said, hey, listen, when I was doing $6-7 million a year, I didn't make any more profit than I was doing $2 or $3 million a year. I took on more bad clients to grow the business. That more headaches. So they gave me twice as many headaches and no additional money. She said so. So I like that last point, and quality of life, of course, as well. There is that factor that plays into it.
So what are you going to do with this stuff? We've talked for a while. You've made a video. What do you do with it now?
So what my intentions are. I was going to ask you one last question.
Yeah.
If I interview someone, what is it something that you're looking for? For example, I have some people lined up that are doing $200 million a year. What are you looking for in terms of your company? If I was to talk to someone that said, "Hey, Eric, listen, you're talking to these entrepreneurs, and I'm looking for someone that does X, Y, Z." Is there anything that you're looking for? So if you could speak your voice out loud to the federal government or to the SBA or to a large particular partner, what is something that you're looking for?
I what I've tried to do on the civilian side and the government side is I don't want to just be their engineer or their architect. I want to be their business partner. So I want to understand what their goals are, and then take what I do and help them do what they do better.
Right.
So that is usually my message. And if someone is talking to me, well, why you versus somebody else? Well, I'm going to help you achieve your goals, and that might not involve my current skill set, but I'm going to take my skill set and if I understand where you want to go and help you get there. Okay. I want to be a business partner.
Wow. Okay. All right. What I'm going to do? I'm going to go ahead and cut this off, and then we can go and talk about what I'm going to